What if I told you that we could reach directly into the human brain without ever breaking the skin and actually change how you feel, what you see, and maybe even who you think is in the room with you? It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But it's really happening today, and it's all thanks to a force we see every day: magnetism. And this one single force is at the heart of two, well, very different stories. So, on one hand, magnetism is being used in this incredibly powerful, super precise medical tool that is offering real hope to people with treatment-resistant depression. We're talking about a genuine clinical breakthrough here. But then, on the other hand, there's this far stranger device that claims to use magnetism for a totally different purpose: to stimulate the part of your brain that might just conjure up mystical experiences, or even the feeling of a divine presence. So, what in the world is the real story here? Okay, to understand both of these, we have to start with a really basic principle. Our brains, they run on electricity. Our neurons are constantly firing, creating these complex circuits of thought and emotion. And a fundamental law of physics says that a changing magnetic field can create an electrical current. So if you apply a targeted magnetic pulse from outside the skull, you can directly cause the neurons inside the brain to fire. You can literally tune the brain's activity. So, how does this cool physics principle actually move into a doctor's office? Well, let's look at the first application: this incredibly powerful medical tool that shows exactly how a theory becomes a therapy. It's called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or just TMS for short. And honestly, the name kind of says it all. Transcranial just means through the skull. It's a totally non-invasive way to use these powerful magnetic pulses to reach very specific parts of the brain, especially that outer layer known as the cerebral cortex, which is where, a lot of our higher-level thinking happens. And the process itself is surprisingly straightforward. So, a technician places a coil on a patient's head, right over the target area. A machine then sends a powerful magnetic pulse through that coil. This pulse just passes harmlessly right through the skull and induces a tiny electrical current in the neurons just below. And here's the cool part: depending on the frequency of these pulses, you can either ramp up brain activity or dial it way down. And this isn't some experimental thing. It is a fully FDA-approved treatment. For depression, doctors target a very specific region called the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, which is a part of the brain that's often underactive in people with the condition. By stimulating it, the goal is basically to wake it up and rebalance those dysfunctional circuits. And this encourages something called neuroplasticity, which is just the brain's amazing ability to rewire itself and form healthier patterns. There's even a newer, faster version called theta burst stimulation that can get this done in just a few minutes. Pretty wild. So that's the clinic. Now let's take a step into the lab and into a much, much stranger and more controversial story. I want you to meet the so-called God helmet. So this was developed way back in the 1980s by two researchers, Stanley Coren and Michael Persinger, and this device had a radically different goal. Persinger had this hypothesis that spiritual and mystical feelings weren't coming from the heavens, but from right inside our own heads, specifically from our temporal lobes. And so he built a helmet to try and prove it. And the effects the people reported were, well, they were profound. People who wore the helmet didn't just describe, seeing flashing lights or anything like that. They felt something deeply personal and often totally inexplicable: a distinct presence right there in the room with them. And get this, the success rate that Persinger claimed was absolutely astonishing. He reported that a full 80%, that's 4 out of every 5 subjects, felt this presence. That's a number that could completely rewrite our understanding of spirituality. But it also demanded a lot of skepticism. Because here is the crucial point. When other scientists tried to replicate the experiment under really strict, double-blind conditions, that's where neither the person in the helmet nor the researcher knows if the machine is actually on or off. The effect just vanished. People reported feeling a presence just as often with a total sham helmet, which suggests the real power might not have been the magnetism at all, but the incredible power of suggestion. So, what do we have? We've got 2 devices, both using magnets to affect the brain. One is an accepted medical treatment, and the other is basically a scientific controversy. So why the huge difference? What's going on here? Well, the difference really comes down to 3 key things. First, power. The magnetic field in TMS is strong and super focused, while the God helmet's field is about 1,000,000 times weaker. Yeah, you heard that right. Second, purpose. One is therapeutic, designed to create lasting clinical change, while the other is purely experimental. And probably most importantly is evidence. TMS is backed by solid, replicated, FDA-approved studies. The evidence for the God helmet? It's still really shaky and heavily disputed. So, what does this whole tale of two very different devices really tell us about the future of influencing our own minds? This whole comparison leaves us with a few really key lessons. We've definitely confirmed our brains are incredibly sensitive to external forces, and that technology can non-invasively change our mood and our perception, but it also proves that scientific rigor is absolutely everything. Without it, it's basically impossible to separate a real neurological effect from the powerful placebo of just believing something will happen. And finally, we see that the little details, like the strength and precision of the magnetic field, are what separate a genuine medical cure from a fascinating scientific curiosity. So we'll leave you with this thought. We have a technology that can literally rebalance a brain to treat depression. The same basic principle was used to try and make people feel the presence of God. As these tools become more powerful and way more precise, the question is no longer can we tune the human brain, but should we? And for what purposes? That's a conversation that I think is only just beginning.